So then this morning I'm like, great, I've got to order flowers for delivery today for my mom. I was trying to avoid the rush delivery fee.
I think I don't know if we included that, but I guess just talk about it. I don't know. See
Yeah. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. And hopefully we can't wait. We'll find out if people will be back to the so thank you for coming to our TNT Lunchbox. Just really quickly, we're going to have one of these every week with a free lunch. So come and get lunch, and we'll be doing these, continuously on various topics. Next week, I should always look at this before. Megan's going to tell you what it's going to be next week. This week we're talking about social media in the classroom, and so we've got Rachel's going to do a little presentation about hers, and we have 3 social media classroom experts here.
Four, ultimately.
Ultimately 4, but I only see we're missing.
We're missing Stephanie
and Tim. Yeah. So anyway, we have at least 3 in here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have Rachel do her little presentation, and then at the moment we're going to have Tanya and Trisha give a little bit about what they're doing, and then we want to have discussion. So the goal here is not just like present at you. We want to talk about it. We want you to ask questions and see, ask them what they're doing if it works, and ideas you have, and throw them out there. That's what these are for. We want them to be community discussions. I think next week
Tanya is going to be talking about Camtasia and segmented videos to foster student autonomy and engagement in an online course. And the following week is going to be libraries. Folks from the libraries coming to talk about copyright and open access educational materials and research. So if you come, please come. We're thrilled to have you. If you know you're going to come, if you can register, that helps us keep a track of the food counts to make sure that we have enough food for everybody. But if you find out at the last minute that you've got time and you want to pop in, no worries. There's always extra. All right.
And Meg, I'll be here next week.
Oh, thank you, Tanya.
Good job. I also forgot to introduce Lauren Lutz. So she's actually Rachel, one of Rachel's kids. And with no further ado, we'll let Rachel take it away.
Wonderful. And our intention certainly is not to talk at you either. It's just that what we're going to talk about today is so visual that we wanted to be able to show you a very exciting use of technology in microbiology labs. And so many of you know me. I teach biochemistry, microbiology, medical microbiology. And Lauren, I was very fortunate to make her acquaintance as a student last semester, and she has since become one of my most indispensable assistants in the lab. She's helping me with medical microbiology. And so she's going to bring to you the perspective of a student seeing this technology evolve, and then as a teaching assistant, seeing the student running with what they sort of discovered to begin with. So what we do in the microbiology lab is multifaceted. The students are learning for the very first time techniques of microscopy and basic bacteriology, which quite literally means they're learning how to take unknown bacteria and identify them using biochemical tests and microscopy. And so the science is exceedingly visual. And so that's where technology comes in. Technology has classically been taboo in a microbiology classroom because we work with infectious agents. And so cell phones are considered home-like, things that could take bacteria home on them. And so they're not always that welcome in a lab, which, as all of you already know, I'm preaching the choir when I say that it's really hard on students not to have their cell phone. And so I've completely changed that practice, and we deal with safety accordingly, but we allow students to have cell phones. And this is something that actually has made the news. And this picture is a picture taken by Rob Meyer. You're seeing in this picture the Bacillus subtilis and the endospores that it forms when it's going to rest. It's a little bacteria. So this was an article. This is a picture taken from an article that was in the Boomerang on February the 12th of this year. And we had a reporter that just heard about us and heard that we were allowing cell phones in the microlab and that we were using them to take pictures through the microscope. And so he came to take pictures of the student taking pictures through through the microscope. And that's actually what you're seeing here. This is DJ, and DJ is doing what is almost like a video game of aligning the circle of light in the microscope with his cell phone, and then allowing him to take a photo through his microscope. And you can see here that on his cell phone, he's taking a picture of what's called a negative stain, where we've stained the background and the bacterial cells are the long white rods on there. So having cell phones in the microbiology lab has become a technology that the students have taken complete ownership of. And we've seen the technology just like roar ahead without me knowing what's happening. And that is actually where Lauren comes in, because during the semester that Lauren took micro, the students started to discover that rather than just using their phone to take pictures, it was much more effective to use Snapchat. So I'm going to have her comment on that and how she did it. And I don't remember which student it was that started doing this, but I know, I think it was in your lab section.
Yeah, it was in my lab section, and I don't remember exactly who it was there, but we were taking pictures through our microscopes, which we thought was really fun. Kind of cool to see it blown up. But then we started thinking, you're taking so many pictures in a lab, and when you're first learning, you don't necessarily know just by glancing at a picture what you're looking at. So somebody, and I would love to take credit for it, but I don't know if it was my idea or not. Someone said, well, we could use Snapchat. And on Snapchat, you can add in a little banner. You can type whatever you like in there. And then at the bottom of your Snapchat screen where the red arrow posts, there's that little symbol that saves whatever you have to your gallery on your phone. So you can take as many pictures as you like, label them, and save them. I took tons. I had some of my unknown. I had this one of E. coli and yeast, just because I thought it was really pretty. I liked it. And it became a thing that everyone was doing because it made it a lot easier to keep track of what you were looking at. So then you weren't just ending up with, 50 pictures that you've been taking through the microscope, but you actually have labels on them. So when you went back 2 days later or whenever you were able to, you actually could remember what you were looking at. And so that's why we really started using Snapchat for that purpose. And I think it was really helpful. I brought it up at the beginning of the year then to my lab section, and they were all like, what? Okay, because they were, learning how to take pictures through the microscope as well. But then to be able to label them and save it with that label is really helpful, especially for someone who's learning about a new subject area. And who's not like Rachel and can just look at a picture and be like, oh, this is with this and this and this. The rest of us have to like struggle with a little microscope.
Perfect. And so then our team, which we have a large group of teaching assistants in micro, I'm actually currently supervising 10 teaching assistants we have is really great. And so I would say it was like this collaborative process of how do we then start to archive these images? Because I began to realize that they were coming out really very hard to recall. And so we wanted to be able to start archiving them and having a place to share them, a social networking, micro social networking. And so one of my TAs said, well, hey, no problem. I have Instagram. I use it all the time. I'm going to create a wild microbiome Instagram. And so we now have an Instagram page that is actually open and accessible. And I'm actually going to go ahead and try to bring the actual page up too. But this is what you'll find, beautiful imagery. And you go to this site, and all of these pictures are taken by students and shared, and a lot of them are tagging what they did that day in lab. And so even if we scroll down on this site, you can see that some of these images were just uploaded yesterday, and this one's been hardened by a couple people already. This is actually the isolation of their unknown bacteria and negative stuff growing on a kind of meat that it holds that kind of bacteria. So this is a pretty cool way for them to social network with their microcultures, and it's been really successful, and we're looking for it to grow. We're going to do a photo contest this semester, So we're actually going to give extra credit on the cover photo. So that's the Instagram site, but the other cool thing that has come up with this is also the fact that this allows more thoughtful, careful notebooking practices. So one of the cornerstones of laboratory science is making a reflective notebook that it does show all the data that you've recorded. And the students now are taking photos, printing the photos, and then taping them in their notebooks so that they actually have a visual record of what they've done. And so I got a picture of that. This is just a photo that I took of one of our students' notebooks where she's notebooking and keeping record of what she's done in the lab. But these photographs are actual photographs that she took through a microscope and then taped in a circle to show exactly what that was. And that's a common practice in notebooking. So the idea of having actual pictures of the results. We've always taken, but this is a whole new level of that practice. I mean, start teaching them the initial thing. So it's a really unique extension of that. And that's where I want to she actually brought her notebook, her physical notebook.
My lab notebook that was so loved that it lost its back cover. But I have a bunch of places where I've taped in the pictures that I took through the microscope. So like this is the E. coli yeast one that we just looked at. Sometimes I got a little overexcited and I like had to use another page and print out bigger pictures because I really wanted to. And then when you have the picture, right, you can crop it, zoom in on specific parts of it that you want. So this is what I started doing in my notebook, which was much more effective than, say, in the very first lab I did do this. And the amount of time that students have really to spend drawing accurate pictures of what they see is not, very good, right? So you end up with things that look like this, right? Where it's just like a pencil or a pen rather, but just a basic drawing. And you really can't tell a lot from that, or as much when you go back as you can from it, right? Where you're going back and you're seeing the actual pictures of what you saw through the microscope. You can say, oh, that's right. This was the gram stain of my unknown. This was the acid gas stain of my unknown. And so as you're going through those, it makes it a lot easier. And I did that throughout the semester. So even with plates and things like that I wanted to archive. And there's a bunch.
We can even talk about
Yeah. The pages are marked. Oh.
It also allows us to do a lot of thoughtful investigation because we can what they're seeing. And sometimes one of the primary problems in a like entry level lab is that we don't know whether they're actually seeing what we want. This way we know.
I have two questions. Could you say again what the advantage to Snapchat was?
Yeah, so the reason to start with is that apparently, I don't know the tech, maybe Christy knows the tech behind it. It's a slightly like different angle lens.
It's slightly wider.
It's a wider
like lens and it's kind of focused.
And then my other question is, I thought one of the selling points of Snapchat was that the pictures disappeared.
Right.
They're not sending it, they're saving it to their gallery.
So
while it's there, they just say, oh, okay.
For something that it was not necessarily intended.
Right, which is so good, right? So
the joy of Snapchat, yes, is that you send the picture goes away in how many seconds that work. But you can also use it to label something, and then you can save those pictures to your gallery with that whole one. So yeah, they're never being sent, actually. They're just being archived and then closed out.
So I guess two reasons. One is the being localized and the but yes, it's completely usurping a technology for something it wasn't intended for at all.
Yeah.
But that's the cool thing about it. Yeah.
So this may be more of a Snapchat question. Does it only disappear if you send it, or does it?
Right.
So it sits there on your
It's like a cached version, so you take a picture, it's cached, and you either send it or save it.
Oh,
If
okay,
you send it, it goes away.
okay.
If you save it, then it goes to your gallery. And they have to take a screen cap if they were to save it. It disappears on your side. It's 5 seconds, 10 seconds.
I mean,
That is going from there.
if you all have Snapchat and you pull it up, you'll notice that like right at the bottom of the Snapchat, there's little, and the Snapchat right there is the archive button. So have you guys heard of that?
That's it.
This just started, they just, first conference was announced. Speculation until the end of the summer, but it's based on visual representation. So it could be that you start to get some really cool pictures from the students who can interact with individual orders, 1 entry per individual team. And there's some pretty nice cash prizes, but it's related on visualization of science. So there's a lot of microscopic pictures.
An entry of the,
So they actually, that's a sub-website for the.
okay, now I'll read that. And I have a question.
I was just wondering, you know, that 5 to 10 second window, does that include, is it motion? Possible like a little blogs or something, or is it? Because with things are changing over time.
You can send videos as well. I have never tried to save a video, but I can have my phone. Let's try. I've never tried to save a video, but you can send videos. I think the limit is like 30 seconds.
Well, yeah, I think you can, you know, because I was thinking with sign language, you know, the facial expression is so important. We need that movement, that message. So I was just wondering, you know, pieces seem to be like that frozen frames. So it'd be nice to know if you have it.
Yeah. And then we do like looking at flooding, and for example, that might be, you know, or flagellated, you know, bacteria that are spreading that we can.
Right, we're just testing it out, and you actually can save videos that way. Video clips, and save them to your phone gallery.
Well, see, now that's exciting. And I'm sorry, what is this on the slide here? I'm sorry, I didn't pick it up.
Yeah, great. This is a mix here of E. coli, which E. coli are the little pink rods, and then the purple cocci, or purple garden, they're staphylococcus that are normal for this plant. And they're stained with what's called the grams, which separate bacteria into large categories. We have negative and E. coli for gram positive is staph. It's weird.
Sorry, well, these guys are,
Yeah,
they're mostly okay.
these are non-pathogen, but there are some types of E. coli and staph that are.
Any other questions for Rachel? I mean, she's gonna be here for a little while, she does have to leave with you, so. I have questions for her. Oh, sorry.
I actually had a question, and it may be a question that you already addressed, Rachel, while I was looking for information. So how did you deal with the issue of contamination, bringing cell phones?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's honest, that can be a difficult question just for you, right? It's not really just a question of stuff, because the students also have the lab manual that's going to come, and that also goes home. It's as much or more of a homework, because paper is actually much more likely to have bacteria. So, in a way, that's one answer here, is that it's actually a false notion that somehow cell phone is more of a problem safety-wise than other things that they might have. And that's one of the ways I do it. The second way is just always education. So letting students know that bacteria are hitchhikers in some cases, and that you need to be aware of your safety practices every day. And awareness and consciousness is the most important safety. So just letting them know that, and the more educated they are on how bacteria behave, what they see as hitchhiking possibilities, respond to possible spills in the lab or contamination in the lab is, that's something, I hope, a good job of. And so yeah, just letting them know that they might want to wash their cell phone, you know, they might want to swab it down, and particularly if there's a spill, we always take care of that in the same way that we would take care of a spill on their lab note.
I also really like Rachel said throughout the lab, because they do have their lab notebooks, they have their pens or bowls or, you know, what should be, that they're using in their lab notebook. So they already have other things that they're taking to and from the lab with them. We always want to make sure that we're taking those practices.
And like Rachel, I actually have to leave early. I'm grading the AdMet contest this afternoon. So I came to kind of talk about Twitter and how you can use it in the classroom, how you can extend conversations, connect with students, all of the above. Coming to Wyoming, I've found that Twitter has been an adventure in and of itself. My undergrads actually grab onto it faster than my graduate students. That's been an entertaining revelation this semester. That said, one of the first things I had to do was create a hashtag to make a unified point of reference. So my students could choose to either follow me or follow that hashtag to keep up with what I'm putting out there. What I've found is that it takes them a while, but they begin to adopt that hashtag themselves, and I start seeing students sharing resources that they find relevant to our class using that hashtag to give us that point of reference. So this started off just kind of a general me, because I am on social media. I like to tell my story. I like to take control of my story, and social media lets you do that. And I've been active on Twitter since its inception, which is kind of sad when I think about it that way. I looked up the creation date, it was launch day recently, and I was like, wow, really? Been that long? Okay. At Wyoming, though, specifically, we also have a statewide education chat every Sunday night. James Capty up in Park 1 runs that and coordinates that effort. And I tune in and out depending on the week and the topic. But this year, this semester, I require my students to participate because I'm teaching pre-service teachers. They need to learn the value of that personal learning network and how to connect with teachers in the state. The best reaction has been teachers and administrators in the state when you introduce yourself at the beginning of the chat and they say, I'm an elementary ed major, I'm a secondary ed major at UW. And everybody latches on, oh, it's so great that you're finding this, that you're doing this, you're participating. So it's actually giving some of those students an advantage because their names are getting out there to the administrators in the state. When they get ready to look for a teaching job, that administrator will likely remember that that student was trying to be proactive as a student with their professional development. So there's an unintentional added benefit. So that's one requirement of my class. But outside of that, I'm constantly sharing resources. It could be an email that I get because I read the weekly digest from the Chronicle of Higher Ed. It could be something else that I'm reading inside Higher Ed, an article in Slate or TechCrunch that I come across, an announcement when Google decided to revisit the Google Glass project, talk about wearable tech. That's relevant. Do I want to blast my students with emails all the time? Not really. Do I want to try to remember to make an announcement in class, hey, guess what, this is happening? Probably not. I can tweet it in the moment, and they can choose whether or not it's relevant to them and pay attention to it. I have found that initially it's very much a one-way communication, but then I find out in class that they're paying attention because they reference a tweet or they reference an article that I tweeted out, and I'm like, oh, they are listening. Yes, we're getting through. I'm making a small championship here. It's a small win. But it's becoming interesting as we progress through this. So it's something that I've become very passionate about. I get a lot of my information about the campus community from Twitter or from Yik Yak, not quite the same. But we may want to not consider last year's dark years of all of the meetings on campus. But I actually found that I was the point of information for our department because I had TweetDeck pulled up and I had the UWIO hashtag in one column. And then I had Laramie in one column, and then I was following the Trib education reporter in one column, just so that I could have a live, real-time feed of what was happening related to the Sternberg meeting. So faculty and graduate assistants were coming down the hallway, what's going on, what's happened now? They could have easily done it themselves, but they weren't familiar with the tool just yet. In the last year, at least a half a dozen faculty in the College of Ed have signed up for Twitter accounts, and we're starting to get more engaged in that aspect. But I am finding, especially as we have an online graduate program, my students are dispersed not only in the state, but around the globe. They choose to connect with me on Twitter at night because they don't want to use email, they don't want to use the course shell, and this is an immediate venue. They're at a conference, they know they can tag me in a tweet and ask me a question about a session, and they know I'm going to get that alert and I'm going to respond. So it has all kinds of uses that you may not even think of, and some uses we haven't found yet. But it's been a very rewarding experience and something that I will continue.
Does anybody have any questions right now for Sonia?
And if you think of a question later, you can always tweet me. It's TA do say.
TA and then my last name.
Okay, so I use Pinterest in my class, and the reason that emerged is because my students were using it, and I realized that my first year students in education at UW already had an online identity as teachers. So they had, for when I become a teacher, they had boards related to their future career. And that was how they were getting a lot of resources and information about what early childhood teaching is. And so I decided to get online and look at what they were posting and pinning to their boards, and I found that there was a lot of sort of very traditional teaching content, things that reflected how they were taught as kids. But what it did was it communicated to me what are their values and beliefs and identity of teaching and as teachers, and how does this relate to what they think learning should look like for kids. And so it gave me a starting point for how to teach for change. So if we're going to try to change and enlighten students and talk to them about other ways of educating our young children, we need to know where they're starting from. And they need to know where they're starting from. So this gives them a visual piece to reflect upon. And so, but they were just being consumers of information on the internet. That's what I noticed. They were just finding cute things and putting them up. And there wasn't any depth in it. So I decided to figure out, are they shifting as we go through class? Are they shifting the type of content on their boards, and encouraging them to pin content that is more related to what we're learning in class? And that did happen. So then they have choices of assignments, and there's all different ways of going about it, but some of them reflect on the change in what they're searching for on the internet. Some of them went back and posted comments on things they had posted earlier. Then they were encouraging them not just to be consumers, but contributors, where when they teach, they have to post pictures of the things that they do. And when they get repinned, they get really excited because the world out there is looking at what first year students are doing and finding it inspiring enough that they want to pin it and share it with other people. So instead of saying, which we used to do, is you can't find your resources on the internet, this has to be your own idea. How can you use an image to help inspire you to do something really meaningful with kids? Because there's a lot of great information out there. And then how can you be an inspiration to others? And so, I just got a message from my student being like, because they're planning their first teaching experience. And she's like, here's 3 things I saw on Pinterest. Here's my reflection on what's happening in my class. To any of these, do they seem appropriate? And can you give me some advice? So I have a visual right there. They don't have to write it all out. I can kind of get an idea and give them feedback. And then when they design their own classroom, they use all the resources that are out there. I also found there was issues before with them just gathering information from the internet and not citing it and things like that. And now we don't sort of have that issue because credit top.
Sure. In the summer of 2013, a study was released that showed 80% of K-12 teachers were on Pinterest and either actively pinning or getting their classroom lesson plan ideas from Pinterest. Mm-hmm. This just follows that trend and prepares them for what's expected.
Have you done anything with like shared boards where they're pinning to the same boards?
We've done both. So we have a class board, and as far as I can tell, really, I don't know, I can't find another one online. And we have a couple hundred followers who look at us, and that was great because we've done like some service learning projects and things like that we can post. I also post resources for them there.
Right.
We did a lot of fundraising for different projects, and we posted all the great work we did. So we have that, and then it's just a little clunky to like add everybody and all that kind of stuff. Keep finding, right. So we do that, but then I want that stuff on their own boards. So I kind of shifted, but I realized when I was thinking about this, I went back and looked at the class board. I was like, that was kind of cool. That we had a class board and we could build from semester to semester onto it, which is more like what you're doing. It's just finding the most efficient way to do it.
And clearly they serve very differently.
Yeah.
And people could repin things off of the class board onto their own personal boards if they've got.
And they repin things from me all the time. So they all have, like, I have I have a whole site that's just my teaching stuff. And so then they know, if they're wondering, would Trisha like this or is she gonna think it's really bad? They can look and they'll be like, okay, I get what she's talking about now. Like I saw that slide in class, now I found 20 other pictures that relate to that. So it helps, it gives them a little more depth.
So, I'm not certainly the most tech savvy.
Neither am I.
But I guess the question that comes to mind, you're encouraging students to social site, they're primarily social, or maybe they're using other ways that don't help. Are you encouraging them to have a professional, I guess, I'm thinking of Pinterest, I have Pinterest things, food recipes, I can see that might come. What I want to present to an administrator, or I guess they wonder on.
We talk
Twitter
about
and
it
things like
in
that.
their pre-service teacher technology class about kind of the ethics of the digital image that you put forward. And probably unique from some aspects, my professional and personal identities are blended. You go to my Pinterest boards, I think I have a dozen. You'll get everything from my favorite lasagna soup recipe to the best infographics that I have found to teach my message design visual literacy class. I very carefully walk that line and I think about anything I tweet or pin or send out on any Instagram even. And I think about what message might this send and how appropriate will this be, which varies by the receiver. I can't control if that receiver is very conservative and will not approve of something I might do, or if they're very liberal and thinks that's the greatest thing ever. So all I can do is manage my identity and make sure that I'm very mindful of that presence. So we do emphasize that. It starts when they come in for summer orientation. That's one of the first things our office teacher ed talks about. What are the pictures you're sharing? What are the messages you're sending? And I do find I follow all of my students on Twitter if they let me. And if they are tweeting something that I think they probably don't want to tweet, then I'll send them a private message so that I can connect with them and let them know that somebody is watching. Maybe you don't want to share stuff like this more often in the future, because you do need to think about that digital footprint and what that means when you're hunting for a job. Have a little bit more freedom as higher education professionals than they have as potential K-12 teachers.
That's so important. That most of our students are out there using social media often in very inappropriate ways, and they think that they know who's going to see what they're posting. But the reality is that anyone might see what they're posting, including potentially future employers, future in-laws, it runs the whole gamut. And that's true of anything. That's true of your text messages, it's true of your emails, it's true of absolutely everything you're sending out there. And so I think that social media presents a fabulous opportunity to help students learn about that and understand how important it is to be really mindful about the way they're presenting themselves, because they really have control over who's going to see.
And like you said, you might think you know, I have found graduate students, master students in other colleges and departments who have found me on Twitter because I'm very visible. I use the UW Vital hashtag a lot. And they come to me and ask, hey, do you have a grad class? I saw this project that your students are doing. I want to take that class. Or I'm looking for doc programs. You're doing really cool stuff. I saw what you tweeted. I saw your Instagram. It became a recruiting tool that I didn't expect. Research collaborations I haven't expected. People I didn't know about. My undergrad class did a live tweet chat with a pre-service teacher class in United Ireland last month. And that came about from a random tweet exchange with me and someone else that a third party saw. We connected and within 2 weeks had the schedule to be ready to roll. And then we finished up that Twitter chat with a quick Skype so that they could see each other. And some of the students are still talking. So even we don't know.
I was just gonna say, are there, with images that are not your own, are there copyright issues with tweeting and pinning?
With pinning, no, because the source comes from the source website. The way that Pinterest is designed under the hood is that it scans the page looking for images that it can grab, and you select which image to pin. It comes from the source. With tweeting, there are some issues with sharing memes and someone taking credit. So if I find a great picture, there's a fantastic one that I found yesterday. A friend shared. I wanted to tweet it out, but I was very happy at the bottom. It was like this was created on, and it had the website. So I don't have to worry about somebody mistaking I created it, and then I'm trying to put it out there as intellectual property.
I think I was just going to follow up comment. Fantastic. You kind of integrate profile. I think all too often, we know that students to know that their professors are and that they do have a blended identity. I'm sure that I have a big electrolytes are big nutritional tips. That's a part of my presence. Also there, and that's very blended with my which is also very blended with coaching that Christine and I shared. Just recently, I became director of studies, minor for undergrad, and all of a sudden now I'm going to gain a queer presence as well, which there are many people out there that would say that things that I can put out there might be inappropriate,
Right?
Especially in that latter.
Yeah.
But I think that a multifaceted role model, potential mentor is so important. And I just love the way two things, not only like the fact that graduate students are finding you, prospective cohorts like that might research possibilities, but also you mentioned just inspiring faculty to be more multifaceted. I would just like to say, I think that's that integrated nature.
It's funny you mentioned it. I have an entire playlist of good. I used to do contests with Paula Hayden, and I used to get samples from Craft. All of those videos were there. I also teach our multimedia video production class. So I can talk about that experience of this is how you film it, and this is how you edit it, and this is the tool I used. So tying it back to everything. And before I forget, because I do have to dash, in terms of the first year seminars next year, our program is offering the ITech 1101, Are You Naked Online? Managing Your Digital Footprint. So I think that'd be a great class for, obviously we're not targeting education students, they get a lot of this in their ITech 2360, but across campus, feel free to promote that class for students to learn about their digital identity and its importance.
But I have a question.
Yeah, it sounds like it's great. She said that I've had a Twitter account for several years, and I tweet at least twice a year. I get emails that suggest new people to follow, and that is what sends me over to Twitter. That's what sends me to Twitter. I'm not checking or following Twitter daily. I don't understand, therefore, what it means to pay attention to precious tweets. If I were a student in your class, would I be checking into Twitter as an app on my phone? Would I put the tweet come to my email, or do I have another Twitter open?
Many students rely on the Twitter app. personally, because I have my email open in one tab and I have Wild Courses open in another tab. I have a tab open to TweetDeck. It is a Twitter product, and I can control my columns. So like I have my UWYO column, and that's one that I'm checking every day to see what's going on campus. Is there some event? There might be 2 or 3 days that I'm not checking it. There might be a week that I'm not checking it. I'm at a conference or busy. And it is the information age. You miss a lot of information in a week. But at the same time, just checking in when you can is useful.
I think from a student perspective, with just real fast with regards to the having like a personal and a professional presence online, I feel like it's almost unrealistic for our students, the generations of students that are coming up. I worked professionally in my husband's life for 9 years before kind of going back to school, so I have kind of different perspectives on it. And one of the groups I work with high school students, and these are students that, you know, our students now are growing up with technology. You know, they're not getting it introduced to them when they are in college or when they're in a professional setting. So having those 2 separate things is not really realistic, you know, for our students. And so I think it is about teaching them how to be responsible, right? And I feel like that education should start even before they get to college. You know, it should be starting in middle school. As weird as that kind of sounds. Right, middle school mindfulness. I think we have a award-winning idea there, but hashtag middle school mindfulness. But truly, you know, they need to be taught how to manage that online. And I think when we by telling them that you have to have like a personal and a professional, then it's kind of making it seem like there's something shameful or wrong about being like in community, right? About having about having like a love for delicious soup recipes, or I mean whatever it happens. I'm just doing that. But yeah, or like I have on my Pinterest, I have a workout board, right? Of like different workouts that I want to try, or like things to get me motivated. And I don't think there's anything wrong, you know, with that. But I think when we do that to our students, it's very confusing for them.
It's a mixed message.
Right. It's a mixed message, right? What has to go in this personal box and what has to go in this professional box? Because in some people's professional box, the recipes would go, right? Because you're doing this thing, and that would be a more personal thing. Whereas someone who's a personal trainer, their workout things might go in their personal things. But for me, they're professional. But for me, that might be more personal because I'm not a trainer.
And you get into this concept of multiple identities. I have so many K-12 teacher friends. We went through teacher preparation together 15 years ago. And so they have separate accounts with big names where they are themselves. And I'm like, I can't function as a split personality. I feel like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
It's such a perfect example. I don't know if you watch Monica when he's recent.
Oh, Cortez Hawk, yeah.
But it's a perfect example of online cheating.
Yes.
Like the idea that there is some issue in your personal. I think that's how do we respond to fully what other might be created because of something.
So I work in mental health, part of my preference, and it's not that I'm ashamed of my personal life, but I'm very aware that I am watching that, and that's something that is a very important boundary of personal and professional. And not that I don't want them to see me as a person, but oftentimes the clients I work with aren't able to initiate that boundary, set that boundary. I'm just thinking about the students that I am working with for future psychiatric teachers, and how they might. And I think they have to be a little bit more mindful of who's watching. And I do have colleagues who choose not to be on social media. I already have one stopped because of it. There's been some different things, so they do choose aliases that make them harder to find. But it's just it's an interesting thought of integrating this in a classroom of professional. How do we integrate it, and how do we keep ourselves?
I think you have to look at the security locks. Lock down your profile. which means you are the gatekeeper to control who sees it. Right. And I think in certain contexts, especially in health contexts, that's very important. So whether it's Instagram, whether it's Pinterest, even whether it's Twitter, all of them, go into those security settings and lock it down so that you're there. You can let your students, you can let other professionals in your organization and life engage and participate. But it prevents. It can be. There's always, you always run the risk of a hack. Nothing is that secure.
If you, highly inappropriate, but John Oliver just did a thing about, the Patriot Act and the security, the things that the government can take. You should watch it. Yeah. It's really funny.
Patriot Act in itself is scary.
Highly inappropriate, highly appropriate, but so don't watch it like, in your classroom without watching it first. But it's really good. And it talks a lot. I mean, it's stuff that is available.
There is a good message underneath the inappropriate.
Oh, there is. I mean, it's incredibly clever, actually. But that's what I want.
I can see what you're saying from that perspective. Point, right? And I that would be very difficult to balance, right? But I'm going to be starting this school actually in the fall, and I have gone on Pinterest actually, and there's all these like boards of resources, and there's all these really cool things about it too, right? And that would, I'm not lucky to go into psychiatric nurse practitionership, but I can see how that would be very balanced.
And part of it is, technology, so in that or not that I never share at my story with, I'm careful about what I share, and even careful enough of pictures that I have in the office, and there are individuals that barely share that.
So then when you're talking about potential regulations and guidelines, I'm working with students who work. So this last quarter, I was teaching an elective for the lab school as part of a service learning and a research project. Every class, I wanted to capture what they were doing. I was very careful that you might have hair and a shadow of a cheek, but there were no faces of those 7th through 9th grade girls in my pictures that went out on social media, because I needed to be very mindful of that. And I had undergraduate students volunteering with me, and one of them was like, why do you want me to get a top-down picture of their work? And I said, I don't want their faces. And he went, oh, I hadn't thought about that. So it was a great learning experience for him, where I'm practicing what I preach, so to speak. But you have to be careful depending on the field and any regulations and guidelines that affect that.
Just shut down. But they're getting terrorist threats.
Yes.
And
Border Patrol too. I think all branches are. Yeah, they're all getting hit with threats. I'm so sorry, but I do have to.
Well, I thank you guys so much for coming. If you want to stick around and continue the conversation, we also have another social media expert in our room that has
4,600 something followers.
Yeah. Who can continue the
I
conversation.
am global, and if it weren't for Twitter, I would just be everywhere beyond. So don't close yourself off to the idea, because you're closing yourself off to a world of resources.
I think that what I think is that we have an incredible opportunity, with your students to discuss these things, right? To discuss. It's an important conversation. It's awesome, it's just like with the pre-service stuff, and what Tanya was saying, saying, okay, reading a tweet of a student going, maybe that's what they want to be doing. I mean, it's an important thing that I think everybody needs to learn at this point, and especially professionals in education and, social work, all of those,
My students take pictures all during class because every class we do hands-on type things, and you think it's really fun to post like, look at what I did in my class today. But what I'm seeing now is like on their Pinterest pages and on their Facebook pages, it's like one student said, "This is my life." And it's like, she's saying, this is my identity as a student, and I'm learning to do these things. And they're saying the crossovers there. They want to share this information across their life. So it's like, this is what I did in class. I want my friends to know it. I want my parents to know it. And so I think we have to just teach them the right way to do it. But maybe that needs to be deeper later. Yeah, really early, because it's kind of late at. They're already doing it. They've been doing it for years.
A lot of damage to their personal profile.
I think as we, you know, as we see the current generation of primary executives that come up to higher ed, we see that they've integrated various kinds of technology, including social media, or into not just their personal life, but also their educational lives.
Right.
So then that transition to a professional usage is, I hope, will be more seen. And I know I've got a 13, 14 in 9th grade, and you know they're doing stuff and course website. They
My son's Spanish class, they all had to sing popular music in Spanish. And then that's on YouTube. And my daughter's Spanish teacher at a different school pulled them up because they have to do it in a talent show here. So I'm like, and so last night we were watching all these videos, and then we searched to see other classes that were doing Spanish, you know, singing in Spanish online, and there's tons of them. So they're like, oh, what song should we pick? Let's see what other people have done in Spanish 1 or Spanish 2 or Spanish 3. What song can we sing? So it's all out there. They're using it. And it was really exciting, fun to see them doing it last night. Being engaged in Spanish, like through YouTube.
There are ways to consume too, like watching other people do.
Yeah.
Like if you were interested in accessing what's available on Twitter, you could set a profile and just watch, just follow professional organizations in your profession, and never tweet a thing, but just watch and learn from what you're sharing.
And Rachel, who was here, she has a microbiology called Virtual Edge, a lot of it called Virtual Edge, Twitter account that she follows, you know, like all of the big microbiology type things. I don't know what they are. I'm trying to come up with something. I got nothing here. Right? But she follows all kinds of big important microbiology things, and she learns them, and then she retweets them from her account. And then she has a lot of students that follow her then, because the stuff that she tweets, it's not just like random microbiology stuff that she has now vetted, right? No, so it's come through Rachel, and now that they know that she vetted that, and that's good information. It's a cool thing. And she doesn't do anything else. Like she doesn't make this part of her class really. She just tells students that this is here, and she doesn't really actively do anything besides just that thing.
I thought that use of Snapchat in her class is just really fascinating because it's like exactly contrary to what Snapchat really is for.
I know. When she said that, I'm like, what?
That's so cool. Because Snapchat is like originally to help you kind of keep that professional identity clean because stuff disappears, right? It's so interesting. Take technology and turn it on its head like that. It's great.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mary, and possibly Kate, but I didn't hear anything Kate, so it might be Kate that's on there. I'm going to click this so next time you can actually make a comment. You know, and we also need to, get a balance to our online post. We'll get a balance to you. We'll send it out. Yeah. But thank you for joining us. And I'm very mad if you email me and ask questions about it. Well, the last question you asked me, I'm going to think. So, Christy, what do you do? And then we look to, Bye.